Thank you. Good afternoon and welcome, and thank you very much for attending the session. In this session, we'll be discussing about planning agile modernization for success. This is a big framework, and we will be addressing the key challenges and how we address those challenges to make to create a roadmap during the planning phase of agile modernization that would make the project successful. So we will start talking about the aspects of the legacy system and what are the modern systems, and then the fundamentals of the agile modernization we'll be talking about, and then we'll discuss the xPlore framework, which is the end-to-end agile modernization framework, the planning phase framework that combines the stage gate model with service-oriented architecture and defines all. It includes all the best practices and the process steps and the standards together, combines all of those elements, and to make the entire framework for creating a successful modernization roadmap. And then we talk about, while we're discussing each of those phases, we'll be talking about the key challenges and the mitigation plan for each of those as we go there. So the legacy system, when you see this diagram, from 30,000 feet view, you will see all the legacy systems, they look the same, right? And they are all fragmented, their data, the business functions, they are all in silos, they're all complex, very point to point, their integration, they're brittle and fragile, they're very difficult to maintain, and all these things leads to the challenges. There are challenges with data sharing and accessing the data, the flexibility of the system to make the cope up with the changes, and increasing operations and the maintenance cost of that, and the lack of business process adaptability. When there are regulation or compliance changes and the process need to be adjusted, that's where the problem is. It's not very efficient to change those business processes, and ever-increasing compliance and the security risks. And at the same time, the modern system looks where you have all your platform systems, and they are accessed through web-enabled interfaces. There are business services are there. They're integrated through the service management layer, and then all the employees, citizens, and the partners, they access those services. So there are no point-to-point connectivity, and they are very efficient. They're business-driven. They're agile. They follow service-oriented architecture. They are modular. Each of the business service, they build the foundation of the building blocks for that entire architecture. And they ensure the reuse of the existing asset and the shared services, whether they will leverage other services that are available within the organization or across the organizations, or be leveraged, or the services that are created, other entities, other organizations can use it. The on-demand infrastructure, cloud computing, the infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, those concepts that build your agile recapitalization, and where you can invest as much as you need and then elastically increase those capacities. And that increases also the business process efficiency. Now, for this transformation, that's what is the legacy modernization, where we are transforming the legacy system to the modern system. The topic here, what we are discussing, that instead of going in a big bang approach for this modernization, where the legacy system modernized to the modern system, it goes in an incremental and iterative way. So what is that? When you say incremental and iterative way, let's look at some of those fundamental concepts. So let's say, if this is the skateboard that you are running today, you are moving with that, and you want to, that's your current state, and you want to move to a car, which is a fancy car, and you want to move to the target state. One approach is you go in a big bang approach. You move in one step. You go in a big bang and move to become a car, or you take steps and iterative roadmap. Incrementally, you move from a skateboard to a cycle, to a bike, and to a car. That's incrementally you are doing, and then you define the roadmap for each of those incremental improvement of the product. And each of those, they are milestones and they are transition states. So as you are moving, still you are preserving your business continuity, and rest of the business remains the same, and you are matching those milestones and modernizing that iteratively and incrementally. In terms of system modernization, in incremental modernization, the current state, that's the whole pizza. What we do is the first step is we break the entire system into the smaller modules, and that's your bite-sized modules that can be done, and you create a roadmap that to modernize them incrementally and iteratively. So we are not taking that all the modules to be modernized in one go in a big bang way, but what we are doing here is we are iteratively, incrementally, we are modernizing them, creating a roadmap to modernize them in an iterative fashion. There is another fundamental concept which is very important to understand for iterative development, as I discussed that earlier, that the services, the modules, we keep on talking about modules, right? So they form the foundation, the building blocks of of your system, of your entire modern system. So understanding the business service composition, how you incrementally build a bigger service from the smaller foundations, right? So that's what that understanding is very critical when we try to create a modular roadmap for incremental modernization. So let's look at an example. So we have a business process here that defines end-to-end business process over here. Then when we implement that business process in the technical architecture, that's the determined member eligibility, for example. That's the bigger business process, right? And that can be composed of smaller modular, smaller modules, right? So here you see the verify eligibility data that's composed of the two smaller services. So they are your smaller building blocks, right? You can imagine that like those modular furnitures, you take in each individual pieces and assemble them together and build the bigger piece. Now each of those smaller pieces can be used by itself, right? Same thing here. Here, each of those individual pieces, the modules that are being identified, they can be used by themselves, or they can be composed together to build a bigger service. So same thing here, and then the bigger service is composed from those three services over here, right? So those are what is called module. Every time we talk about module, they are the business services modules. The granularity of those modules and their dependencies, look at how the dependency hierarchies goes. Understanding of those dependency hierarchies are also very critical in order to lay out a roadmap, what comes first versus what comes next. So as we talked about the module, before we jump into how we define a roadmap for incremental modernization, let's look at some of those modernization challenges. So unclear drivers, right? So all the motivation factor, the business cases for the modernization is not known to all the stakeholders. Stakeholders' expectations, not that every stakeholder for the modernization who are involved in that, they have the unified expectations, right? Lack of knowledge, the knowledge of the legacy system is not in-sourced, and the knowledge about the business information and the technology aspect of the system is not well known. Complex dependencies, of course, over a period of years, 10 years, 20, 30 years, there are hairy dependencies that are established between the applications. Business continuity. In iterative development, as I mentioned earlier, one thing we need to keep in mind that as we are doing iterative development, the integration to the partner systems and the supplier systems, all the external partners, that remains the same. The business need to be still in operations. That's one of the key things that we should not forget about that. So that business continuity is a key factor in the incremental modernization. Different business priorities. Of course, all the partners and suppliers, they might have different priorities. I might create a modern web service or a fancy, interface, but my business partner is happy with their batch interface. They have no business driver to modernize it. We need to keep that in mind. So how we modernize the system and return the legacy system, but still satisfying our partners and suppliers' need. right? Many cooks and many recipes. So in Agile Modernization, the other challenge that you will face that we create the roadmap. You remember those modules, M1, M2, M3, M4? So 5 vendors coming with their own toolbox in their back. They have different approach, methodologies, skill sets. Okay, so everybody, you try to use their tool to define a solution. Not they're building a solution what is designed for the entire system, right? So, which essentially means that the procurement process, there need to be a foundation, there are foundational elements that need to be established before we invite those vendors and tell them what exactly that need to be built over there, right? And new infrastructure and technology for the organization, it's introducing constantly new technology, new infrastructure. So there is a constant learning curve for the entire organization, right? And then operational change impact, the organization change impact. Of course, there will be if the entire infrastructure move to Amazon cloud or instead of in-house data center, that has a huge organizational change impact. So those are the elements that need to be planned out, how those changes need to be dealt with and will be taken care of as we go through the planning phase. Of course, the iterative modernization doesn't come with the challenges. There are certain opportunities. So let's look at some of those opportunities. Reduced modernization risk. Of course, we are going incrementally at an early phase. We can understand what are the risks associated with that modernization. If there is any problem that need to be traced back and then need to be developed, redeveloped or rethought, that can be done. Reuse, potential reuse of some of the existing legacy systems or components. The alternative analysis we'll be talking about that will reveal the build, buy versus reuse, refactor decisions. Shared services, the modernization alternative analysis market research would give us the opportunity to look at enterprise-wide or across the enterprises, within the agencies or across the agencies, if there are any services that can be leveraged or instead of building it or outsourced. Improved business process efficiency. Of course, the legacy business process now, which was a combination of probably manual process and automated processes, now they can be all rethought and see what are the opportunities for improving the business process, which services can be delivered more efficiently. Improved business process adaptability. The process is now designed using service-oriented architecture concept. The services are now being composed using different modules. Now the processes are now become very adaptable to changes. I have a change impact in the small module for eligibility determination. One small component, one small module is being impacted right there, right? It's not my entire system. I need 20 testers to test my entire system, right? So the quick changes to the business process, and of course, when we improve the business process adaptability, the entire agility of the system improves, right? The system becomes agile. It can cope up with the changes. So which essentially reduces the risk for the compliance, right? So we can comply to the regulations, rules, and quickly make changes to the business processes. All right, so once we look into the opportunities and we understand the opportunities and the challenges, and we'll look at a framework how we modernize the plan for the modernization, the end-to-end, right? Now, most of you are probably familiar with the stage gate model, right? The 3D stage gate model where you have S1BA, S2A, alternative analysis and all, right? So that prescribes you at each stage gate review steps, right? What are the deliverables that you need to produce? Essentially, which means that did you do your homework right? Did you do your work done? Okay. So what we did, we took it to one step ahead. So the xPlore framework combines. So how part of the stage gate model. So the stage gate model defines what need to be done. We combined, the second line is what is service lifecycle model. We created a model with service-oriented architecture concepts with that. and define how each of those steps can be performed. So we combined the best practices, we combined the standards, we combined the process together, and created the tangible deliverable formats, what need to be produced there, and created the checklist. Do you know this? Do you know this? Which essentially will tell you, you did your job right. So, this is a huge framework, which essentially the S1A business analysis, which is primarily, will go over each of those phases. And the yellow, this is a huge process, this will take a long time. But what in this session we will try to discuss is what are the key challenges in each of those things, and that we should not forget in order to make the roadmap efficient. So the first step is the stage one, which is business analysis step. So in the business analysis step, the key questions that are addressed, why are we doing the modernization, right? And so basically define the business cases for the modernization. And then, does the modernization initiative align to the business and strategic roadmap, goals and objectives? Is it an ad hoc plan, or it's aligned to the strategic plan or goals and objectives, right? So the justification for the strategic alignment. What is the funding model? Who is going to fund this whole initiative, right? Now, who is the business services and the portfolio, the service portfolio owner? So basically, the ownership model for the services that need to be established. So those are the key elements that need to be addressed in the planning phase, in the initial planning phase, which is called business analysis phase, right? In the next phase, the alternative analysis, which we call S2AA, where we do as-is analysis and to-be architecture definition and the strategy definition, right? So let's look at the as-is analysis. In the as-is analysis phase, the key objective for this phase is knowledge insourcing. Know your system, know your business. So basically, the knowledge insourcing is defined as analyzing, documenting, and gaining understanding about the people, process, and the technology aspect of your legacy system. So that is a must that need to be done during the as-is analysis phase, because that will open up all your functional requirements, your data, what is their relationships, right? All those things that you need to, and the code that are buried probably in the human brain or in the operational documents or maybe in the source code, that all need to be digged out. Okay, that can be transformed into the modernized system. So what are the components that we need to look? So we classified the components of as-is analysis phase. The business architecture component, which is user interface, business process, business rules, vocabulary, business events. The information architecture, which includes the data flow, how the data is traveling with the application systems, the partners, the suppliers, and the logical relationship between the data, how the definition of the data, and the technical architecture, which is the system use case model, system architecture, the integration architecture, and the integration component. So you can look at the components what are being implemented and how they are being implemented. So as a whole, basically this whole thing together, that gives you the knowledge about your legacy system. That's the part of your as-is analysis. Now the business rules extraction is also required. The business rules are in the people's mind, they are in the document, and they are in the source code. So all those business rules need to be extracted from different sources, okay? But how much analysis is enough? Because the study shows that the top-down analysis, the extraction of the rules, when a system is a legacy system, and the business processes, which are combination of manual and automated processes, the 50 to 70% of the business rules, they are in human mind or in your operational document, not in the source code. So the top-down analysis is very, very important. That's the key takeaway from this slide. Okay, that's the important. We always carried out the tool-based business rules extraction. We always think that we get a tool, we feed the source code, that will give me human-readable business rules. That's a myth. That's not a reality. There is no tool that exists that can give you a human-readable business rules, right? So you need to be careful about that, and that most of the project, you ask your peers, your colleagues, how many tool-focused BRE initiative was successful? All right. So that's one of the key element of this slide. The how much is enough, and then the top 2 portion, you see the return on investment that goes down drastically. Your effort that goes up exponentially with the static business rule extraction, and that those are the tool focused business rules extraction, right? So basically, how much is enough? So that depends on the project, what you are trying to do, okay? And that you need to take a very systematic approach to decide where you want to stop, right? Always remember that the last 10 to 15% of the business rules are irrecoverable. You need to live with that. And more of the emphasis is need to be given on a top-down analysis, because the rules are in people's head. Okay, and before they retire, better capture those rules. So that's about the as-is analysis, right? The to-be architecture definition and the strategy. So the key objective of this is, what are the checklist? So what are the things that we need to know in this particular phase, right? So here, let's look at the checklist of the components that will ensure that you have done your job right, okay? So one is the process improvement opportunities. Did you do in the as-is analysis phase, as we discussed, we have documented the business processes. Now, did you look at the business processes and identify the improvement opportunities for those business processes? User experience, how the services are delivered today to the human users, and what are the opportunities for improving those user experience when they are consuming those services. Alternatives and lessons learned. Is enough market research and analysis has been done before to identify the alternative solutions for the system and made a decision out of that. And the lessons learned maybe from another state or maybe from another department, and is that alternative analysis done? Reuse opportunities, right? What legacy functions can be reused? Okay, so we know the requirements, we know the system use cases that already identified as part of the as-is analysis. Now the question is, what of the bottom-up analysis would tell you what all the legacy systems can still be? You want to throw away everything and build everything from scratch, or you want to still reuse some of those components right there? Business alignment, we talked about that. Are the business services that are identified, are they aligned to your strategy goals and objectives? Service catalog, is a business service catalog established? All the business functions that need to be established, is a service catalog established? Module priority. So here the modules and the business services, I'm using it interchangeably for purpose because they are the same thing, right? The module priorities are important in order to lay out your roadmap. Which one comes first versus which one goes next. Now the module priorities may depend on different things, your business priority and also the technical constraints such as dependencies. Certain modules need to be developed, or there might be such a hairy dependencies that are established over there already. You want to take some isolation of those. So you need to take both the top-down and the bottom-up approach to define the module priorities. Not just the business priorities, not just the technical constraint. You need to consider both, because you are modernizing a legacy system, you are not building a greenfield system. Now, if you cut the sausage vertically, it's going to cut all the nerves and veins. So you need to know how much bleeding you can stop and what is your intermediate arrangement to stop the bleeding, right? So that's basically the goal. That's the bottom-up analysis that you need to do over there. And then the module sourcing, the build, buy, web enablement. So what I can reuse, I can web enable what I need to build, or I can outsource to a third-party vendor. I can reuse some of their services. So I can look at my service catalog and look at the priorities. What is that capability I can reuse? My existing web legacy components, or maybe I do a credit check from Experian address verification for another vendor instead of building a service by myself, or I build something that's my core capability. That's my business capability. I want to build that. So that's sourcing strategy. Technology management strategy, right? Now the new infrastructure, new way of managing things, new way of operations management of the infrastructure. new way of managing the services and the technology? Is the strategy in place? Do we know even, as we are modernizing and building all those things together, how we are going to manage it? How are we going to monitor it? How are we going to do the change management? How are we going to do the release management? So that entire software engineering takes a different ball game when you get into service-oriented architecture, modular approach. So those things are critical component. Most of the time we overlook them. But, and then later on, we get to a situation that, oh, we should have thought about it earlier. We missed those things. So that's the whole purpose of this checklist. If you look at those checklists and ask those questions to yourself, right, then you will know. Technology standards. Again, we talked about many cooks, many recipes, right? Now every vendor will come with their tools, technology, or you might invite a vendor who will come and build something that will become your technology standard. That's a biased decision. That vendor will come and build based on what they know or what tools they prefer to use. Okay, so that is something that need to be defined very precisely, that my foundation for the technology standards, the infrastructure standards, that need to be defined. On top of that, I can be very prescriptive in my procurement, asking the vendor, build this for me this way, not what you want, what you think is right for you, right? So that's the iterative development is need to be, because it need to be orchestrated and coherent as the time pass on, right? As you go, you are coming, building more and more modules. They need to talk to each other, they need to be interoperable and manageable. And the foundation technology roadmap, we'll talk about it a little bit later. Though all those things, normally the foundation, infrastructure, platform, technology standard, normally we overlook them and start getting into the business function implementation, but without any blueprint of the foundation, right? So that's what we'll be talking about that more little bit later. And then business function modernization roadmap, of course. After the foundation roadmap, we create the business function modernization roadmap. So those are the checklists for your alternative analysis, and that you need to look at. And here we define all the tasks and the deliverables that need to be created over here. Most of the stuff that we talked through as we talked through the checklist. One thing that, important thing that I want to emphasize here in this particular session is the technology foundation roadmap and a roadmap definition, right? And what it takes, why we need to do that. So laying out the foundation for the iterative and incremental modernization. So I want to modernize my business function iteratively and incrementally. I want to invite many different small vendors who had the specialized skills to build a specific type of business services, right? Very nice. But that doesn't come without a challenge. That comes with a challenge because the approach, solution, and technology, they coming all, you're calling, if you don't have a prescribed foundation already built, then they will come all different thing and you are building a heterogeneous system again. That will become unmanageable, right? So let's see that. So recap, some of those challenges we looked at earlier. Many cooks, many recipes, the vendors coming with their tool sets, and business continuity. Remember that. We are doing agile modernization. Today we are modernizing one application or set of business function. Tomorrow another one. Life goes on, business as usual. There is no, that need to be. So which basically the mitigation strategy for this is, you need to define the technology standards, framework, and the approaches and best practices, what the vendors need to follow. Define infrastructure and platform strategy. Whether you want to go to Amazon Cloud, how your development test environment, and how your entire DevOps organization would look like. So that's what is very critical before you invite a vendor to build your solution. Establish foundation architecture. Of course, that's what I said. You need to establish the foundation architecture. And then different business priorities for partners and suppliers. All the partners and suppliers integrated to your system, state controllers office, SSA, EDD, FTP, whoever is integrating to you, they have different priorities and requirement for their business process. They may not need a real-time web service interface that you are creating, right? They want to live with their batch interface. They don't have any funding to go with that, right? So how we establish the transition state architecture that will satisfy, will keep them as is, but still keep on moving the way it is. So as we said, the defining the technology standards and framework, the key objectives are creating the agile and flexible architecture using in open industry standards, promote reuse of solutions, facilitate integration, commercial of the self solutions, and tailor technology. There are different categories of the standards that we classified here. We need to define standards in each of those categories. So that's what the initiative during the planning phase, whether your organization has enterprise architecture office or you're managing all your own in the project scope, within the scope, but this is something that need to be defined, whether it's in the project scope or at the enterprise level. Establishing the foundation architecture. So as we discussed earlier, we need to establish the foundation architecture. Number one, we need to establish your strategy for your infrastructure, your hardware server, your network, your storage, how they're going to look like in your modern system. Whether you are moving to Amazon Cloud or you are going to CDT, where are you going? So how that management of that infrastructure would look like, right? So the secure on-demand infrastructure, whether it's in-premise or infrastructure as a service that you are using as a managed service. The second thing is your platform architecture. So everything that runs on your infrastructure on the operating system level, which is your web application server, your middlewares, your enterprise service, anything and everything, roles engine, content management system, anything and everything that runs, right? Whether you want to buy those licenses or you want to use platform as a service. You want to use Microsoft Office SharePoint from Office 365, or you want to have all your own deployment inside, right? You want to use a BI platform, you want to go to Microsoft Power BI, or you want to have your own licenses that you are using in your in-premise licenses, right? Those strategies are very critical to understand what are the technical capabilities or platform capabilities that you need and what's the strategy, how you want to put them together. The third component is establishing an integration architecture, how you are going to integrate to your partners and suppliers, a framework for that, how you are going to exchange data between the different partners and suppliers, how you are going to interact, how you want to consume the services from others, or others can consume your services, right? So those are the three things that makes your foundation infrastructure, and then what we call common technical services, right? There are certain technical services which are common and which are business context agnostic. For example, your security, identity access management, audit, logging, exception management. Those services you build once, the business services, they consume it. So if you build the stack of that services layer, and then when you are inviting a vendor to build a business service, tell them that these are the technical services, they are already, APIs are already there in our infrastructure. Craft them a development environment or a test environment and give them all those APIs right there. Guess what? If you don't do that, every vendor will build those services recursively, which is about 30% to 40% cost that you are adding to each of those modules that every vendor will come and do it. Instead, you have a common layer, ask every vendor to build on top of that, right? So that's very critical. We feel like you need to just build that. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, very easy, right? Once you build that, you are ready to go now to implement your business services. Now you implement your business services on top of that, right? So now your business services you are implementing, that will consume your infrastructure, your platform capabilities, your integration infrastructure, and your technical services, okay? So all those things, so that's how you implement your foundation architecture over there. So defining the infrastructure and the platform strategy, where enterprise technical architecture adoption, some of those approach that we talk about, service-oriented architecture alignment, service hub architecture, performance management and validation, adoption of open industry standard, cost usage. So those are some of the standard approach that you can take while you are defining your infrastructure strategy. That whether a cloud environment for infrastructure is good for you, or you want to use an in-premise data center, what you already have. Or you want to go and use a third-party business service that already established and used as a managed service, or you want to build that for yourself, right? So those are the things. And then the key components, the methods and approach, service lifecycle management, governance process, metrics, policies, processes, and the technology management strategy. Now, so far we talked about, there are two things that we are, the two key challenges that we are trying to address here is how you build the foundation for successful modernization of your business services. That's one component, right? Second thing is how you manage, cope with the different priorities of different partners and suppliers, right? So, and that's what managing your transition state architecture. Okay, so you need to be, need to establish a plan with your platform and your integration architecture as you are modernizing your components, how you go with that. So that's the second one, second challenge that we talked about, establishing the transition state architecture. So let's look at the pattern for the transition state, how it goes. So I have a legacy system, and it's a COBOL CICS system, and then it has a vSAM database. The data is stored in vSAM, right? When I took that module one, in my scope, I'm modernizing that particular component, right? So what I do, I create a modernized business service out of that, right? And which is using Java or .NET, web services, and all those things, right? And I externalize the business rules that I extracted from that modern system, and I put it in a rules engine, right? And then I migrate the data that's stored in the old vSAM database and put it in a modernized, a relational database, right? So I developed one modern. Now you see, I have my old legacy system and the modern system. They are co-locating there, right there, right? As a second step, I expose this service to my external partners and stakeholders who are consuming that service as a business service in the integration hub. And I create an adapter that kind of channelize that. It's a little complex for the technology. I'll pass it through really. What I want to show you that you have created a way for the legacy system users to come and consume that thing through the wrappers that you have established there. And the modern partners, whoever want to consume the modern web services, they can also come there. And now, you human users, I can use a CICS adapter, and they are still using 3270 screen, but using the modern business service over there. And this is the time when I can disconnect that legacy system, right? So at this point in time, you see that if I cut off these two lines, 1 and 2, if I cut off those two, I can live with all those things. But what I'm doing, I'm satisfying the partners and suppliers who want to use the old legacy interface, as well as the modern partners who want to connect to the modern interfaces, right? So that way I can use that. And this is what it will look like as we keep on moving from one system to the other. You'll see the systems over there. They're co-locating the legacy systems there through the adapters. So those are my transition state. As and when I transition my legacy systems partners into the modern web services, the left-hand side, the pitch color boxes, they will keep on reducing. And one time will happen that everything is in green. And okay, but irrespective of that, I have retired my legacy system. I am still maintaining just one system here, which is my modern system. So this is what is very critical when we build the legacy system, incrementally we modernize the systems and satisfying the business priorities of the suppliers and the partners. All right, so with that, what do we know now? Now the diagram we discussed at the beginning, you see there, we are identifying the modules over here, defining the priorities. Now the roadmap, the first 2 points over there is the foundation infrastructure and foundation platform and the common technical services. I put that upfront in my roadmap here. And then M1, M2, M3, M4 that comes after that, those are my business services. Once my foundation is laid out, once my planning for the technical infrastructure and the transition state architecture, they are defined. Now I am inviting the vendor, come and build on top of this foundation. Make sense? So, that should be the first two elements in my modernization roadmap. So, next few slides that gives you the schematics of how a planning phase roadmap would look like. During the planning phase, you see the stage gate 1, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and those are the business case definition, as-is analysis. BRE activity can goes up, move on for different modules if you cannot complete in one go. But your alternative analysis and visions, goal, modernization roadmap, solution requirement, solicitation, vendor procurement, that goes up to stage 3. So this is all your planning phase, and then the implementation phase starts, where you define your sprints in an iterative module and then define the milestones, where release 1 for module 1, module 2, 3 might go in parallel, module end. So that's how you can imagine a roadmap would look like for the for the implementation phase. And that's iterative and incremental. All right, now we are open for questions and answers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
In this whole modernization in agile and iterative way, how much time, in your experience, can you tell us that, medium-sized modernization, how much time do you allocate for business analysis of the legacy system before you move on to the creating your transformation roadmap?
So normally you do that's part of the as-is analysis. So when you analyze your business processes, data, and the technical components over there, and during the as-is analysis, you identify all the business process, their interfaces, and everything, right? So that happens during the planning phase. Let's say if the planning phase is a 12-month planning phase, normally the as-is analysis that goes on during the entire planning phase, typically you can time box it that need to be completed in 1 year, or sometimes if you have certain modules which can wait and can be done later, you can spread it across so that you don't have to do it. So depending on the volume of your system, you need to allocate how much time you have and then allocate the resources accordingly. But if you can spread it across, it can go in when you are implementing module 1, you might be doing some BRE work for module 5, for example.
So it goes parallel.
But you can go in parallel, yeah. But that depends on the dependencies and all the use case requirements. Any other question?
Hey, thanks.
There you go. Nope, you're good. You're good. Hi, Ben Word, Department of Technology. I really like this from an architecture perspective as well as a project management tool to use. As we move from the state, and I've been with the state quite a bit, a long time, we manage systems very well. So what I heard you talk a lot about is service delivery, and Karin here. So we're moving into leverage or be leveraged services. And so my question to you is, from your experience, how much detail and design has to happen up front versus as the sprints start? So for instance, I hear, well, we're doing Agile, I don't have to architect much because we'll figure it out as we go. So from your experience, how much of that target state needs to be done before they start the sprints, if you can share on that?
Right, sure. That's a very good question. Thank you, Ben. There are two components of it. One is your infrastructure and platform design and the business service design. I will separate it out in two aspects. The infrastructure and the platform design, you design a blueprint of it, but you don't craft the entire, you don't need to procure 200 virtual machines in day one. But you know how to scale it up. You know, you define the strategy, what is your storage architecture is going to be. Okay, and adapt it at the beginning, first few modules, first 1 year, what you need for that, right? But you don't bind all them together because you have the elasticity. You can increase it as you need, but how you are going to do it, that's what you decide upfront, right? When it comes to the platform capabilities, that's a very good question. That based on your business service implementation, there are two components of the platform. There are foundational component of the platform. For example, your database, relational database, or might be your web application server, some of the integration hub, those components, they makes your foundation platform capabilities, right? Those are the components that need to be present on day one. After that, the specialized capabilities, for example, content management. In my business system, I may not need even a content management system till 2 years down the line. So I don't need to worry about that part right now. But I may need a business rules engine on day one. So the capabilities, the platform services capabilities, you need to lay out the foundation platform capabilities on day one. But the specialized capabilities, you derived it from your business functions roadmap and see when you need that and where you need that. And that's how you start your procurement plan accordingly. When it comes to the business service, one of my checklists was the service catalog, right? The service catalog, there is a technique what is called use case decomposition. When you decompose the use cases and group them in your logical group of the functions, then you are defining all those services and their dependencies, right? The technical architects would understand how to decompose them and how to find you remember the first slide when I saw them over there, they were like, the composition that I was showing there, it's basically you identify those components here, right? You identify each of those, because they will map it out to one of those use cases that you already identified. You define what is needed, determine APTC CSR eligibility. I may need a business rules engine for that capability because all the eligibility role need to stay in a business rules engine. That will drive my capability. So if this particular service module is in my roadmap upfront, I need that capability. If that determine member eligibility is a composition of different modules to a service, which is a business process workflow. So I need a workflow capability. I need to have that. So depending on where in the roadmap all those services are laid out, you derive those things. But you need to have some idea. You don't need to do a total detailed design on day one, right? And of course, the service interfaces, you need to design at a high level what data goes in and what data goes out. That are by the data classes, not by exact design of the interfaces. That answers the question, Ben?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other question? All right then. Thank you very much for attending the session.